Hello everybody, my name's David Batho. I'm the Senior Security Specialist at Jisc, and we're going to talk about Cyber Essentials and go through just a quick introduction to what Cyber Essentials is, talk you through the benefits, the 5 controls, the Cyber Essentials stages, and how to apply for it. Background about Cyber Essentials. So the government over a period of time started noticing and looking at all the breaches around the UK and noted that these were due to very simple controls not being implemented. These controls included leaving default passwords on routers, firewalls, photocopiers, and also that very basic patch management was not being applied to the system. So they reviewed these breaches and identified 5 key technical controls: access control, secure configuration, updating software, malware protection, and firewalls. I will go into a bit more detail in a later slide about each one of those in detail. The scheme is backed up by the National Cybersecurity Centre, and what we are seeing now is a lot more government contracts require businesses, education, and higher education to have Cyber Essentials certification. So what is Cyber Essentials? Cyber Essentials is a government-backed scheme focusing on the 5 important technical security controls, from patch management to changing default passwords. These are really important things to do, and the scheme goes through the process on what you need to do, and we'll cover the 5 technical controls in details and the things that you need to try and achieve. So what are the benefits for Cyber Essentials? Firstly, improve your security posture of your organization, both internally and externally, by applying and implementing the 5 technical controls, which we will talk about later. Align your organization to the government-backed UK standard. Demonstrate security within your supply chain, your suppliers, and other organizations you may deal with. Ability to work with UK contracts, partners, and third parties. So let's talk about some top tips for Cyber Essentials. Firstly, scope. Most educational establishments will have an admin and a student network. When you're looking at scope, focus on the administration network as your scope, and that's because most of your sensitive data will be sitting in that area. Home workers. So anybody that works more than 50% of their time at home will be in scope, and they should be using things such as VPNs or software firewalls. Those are kind of good practices that we'd be looking for. Cloud services. Get asked a lot of questions around cloud services, and are they in scope or not in scope? So I thought we'd just put a little comment here. So SaaS, because you have no control over mitigations and implementation of controls, they are out of scope. PaaS-based services are out of scope unless you can apply a control to them, be that antivirus, be that firewalls, etc., etc. So generally they are out of scope. Infrastructure as a service, Azure, AWS, are in scope because you're able to apply a control to that. Therefore, they are in scope. Bring your own device. So if a staff member or a student brings in a device and they access business data by it, they should be in scope. Mobile devices are in scope, and the reason they are in scope is they are potentially accessing your business data, and therefore those devices should be complying to your MDM policies, applications, and should have antivirus deployed. Just look at what the Cyber Essentials protect against, and it's about looking at reducing the phishing attacks, be that whaling or spear phishing. It's about reducing the vulnerabilities, the hacking easy opportunities. So this is talking about your patch management, so making sure those are in place. Next one is around password guessing. So again, make sure you change your default password, change your firewall password, printer password, so they are not set to the default. a quick diagram showing that the 5 controls that we will discuss later sit within the protection component within the protection, detection and recovery framework. About the 5 key controls of Cyber Essentials. Firstly, let's talk about access control. So this is about ensuring that every unique account has a unique username and password. It complies to password policy and you follow the least privilege principle. So ensuring that your accounts have lockouts, you have a length of passwords set, and you have separate accounts for domain admins and general users. Secure configuration form. You have a formal process for your admin accounts. You separate your duties of privileged accounts. You are tracking and monitoring the usage of privileged accounts, and you have a review process for those admin accounts. Where possible, enabling MFA for domain admins, having a gold image for your PC builds that will be deployed to your environment, and also across your infrastructure ensuring that you have changed the default password, be that on photocopiers, printers, workstations, routers, firewalls, whatever kind of devices as well. Patch management is really critical. Firstly, this includes operating systems and firmware across your estates, and you should be following your vendor's recommendations. Cyber Essentials requires you to patch critical security updates within a 14-day period, and any out-of-date operating system will fail you on Cyber Essentials. Open source supported is fine as long as there is an active community in the environment. And of course, ensuring things like phones and servers are within vendors and operating system support. So check with things like Apple Macs which version of operating system is supported, again with your server vendors, firmware and hardware. Malware protection. This is about protecting all your devices, including mobile phones, mobility, laptops and all that sort of stuff. Make sure that you run regular updates to those devices. You can track them, monitor them, scan for them. Restrict access to unsigned software. So if you don't have an approved software list, think about how you're going to manage that. And ultimately, if you can't manage that, think about, do you want to implement any form of sandboxing in the environment? And of course, firewalls. Have firewalls are great, but as soon as you get them, change the default password, set the length of the password, and have a regular review process when those accounts and rules are reviewed, changed, or removed. So in order to pass Cyber Essentials, you need to ensure that you have no out-of-date or out-of-support operating systems running in your environment. And that includes not just that, but also things like phones, telephones, mobile devices. They must be in support by the vendor. And also part of Cyber Essentials now is that you must have senior management sign off of the process. Without those two in your environment that are useful, you will fail Cyber Essentials Plus. Cyber Essentials stages and how to apply for it. What are the challenges around Cyber Essentials and how best to go through the process? So first stage, make sure you understand your scope. So is it going to be the whole institution? Is it going to be a department or whatever? Again, my advice here is it should be for the whole business. So again, think about this. It should be really for the whole business. The questions. Firstly, these questions are available offline. And at the end of the presentation, I will give you access to where to download this. To use those questions, go through those questions, identify what your weak areas out of the 5 controls. Make sure you can answer those questions well. Do you have the correct methods in place and the support to do those? And I think that's really important before you register for it. So this will cost £300 to do. Then you go through the questions. So let's go through the process. Once you are happy with the paper version and you are able to say that you have all of those processes in place, you can go and do the online process. The online process, when you get to it, my advice is give the assessor as much information as you can. For example, make sure you include operating system versions. So if it's a Windows version, make sure you say it's 1809. Say it's Majove for Mac OS. Which iOS you're running. If you've got version 6 iOS, which is not supported, or any of the iPhone versions that aren't supported, make sure that you include them. Go through those questions again, make sure you give as much information as possible. It then goes to the assessor. The assessor will mark, may ask for some clarification on it, but if it says you have failed, you're non-compliant on certain areas, you will have 2 days to go answer those questions, put mitigations in place to put the controls that needed that the assessor has asked for. It will then be reassessed by that assessor. The assessor will say to you, yep, you are complying, you are meeting those needs, reassess. And if you are successful at that point, you will receive your certification. Once you have your certification, remember that Cyber Essentials is a yearly thing. You need to do this on a yearly basis. Cybersecurity, again, is not just for Christmas, it's for every year. So as I've already said, you can download these questions, review these questions long before you take the online assessment process. Download the booklets, go through the questions, have an understanding of what they want from you. Make sure that you're able to implement those controls. Do that. Next, I recommend a lot of times, and it works really well, is we run the cybersecurity team at Jisc. We run Cyber Essentials workshops where people can drop in, ask questions around things like patch management. How do they comply to 14-day patch management? What do they do with outdated operating systems? How do they meet those requirements? All of the complex questions. It's a workshop, it's a drop-in session to help and support you guys through this process. It can be quite challenging, but this is about supporting you, about you getting support contracts, about improving your security posture in the environment. Very well worth doing. So before, again, you do the online assessment, think about downloading the assessment form, go through those 52 questions, think about, can you meet all those controls? That's really important. Talk to your senior leadership team who are responsible for this. Just remember, outdated operating systems and outdated vendor products, you will fail Cyber Essentials. And ultimately, if the senior management have not bought into Cyber Essentials and signed off Cyber Essentials, you will fail Cyber Essentials. So make sure they're aware of this process. Make sure they've bought into Cyber Essentials. It's important. Again, as I said in the previous slide, make sure that you go through the process of making any remediations required following a reassessment, because you've had some questions by the assessor and the assessor's asked you to put some mitigations in place. You have 2 days to do those. Make sure you've got the time to do this, and then you receive your certification. Again, your certification is valid for 1 year. So make sure in the future that you have the support and the time to do this. About Cyber Essentials and cybersecurity is not just for Christmas. And I like that because from Cyber Essentials point of view, it's an annual process. This process must be done annually. And that's because Cyber Essentials is an ever-changing, growing beast. And therefore, it should be done on a yearly basis. So going through this, make sure your team have some budget to do this for remediations, for any components required to put some controls in. and make sure that you have time for the team to do this. And make sure that when you do this, that if you have to do any remediation, again, make sure the team have time to do this. Again, Cyber Essentials requires you to be able to have senior management buy-in. So make sure senior management understand the process, why you are doing this, and get their support throughout the process. Remember, this is a critical requirement of Cyber Essentials. Thank you for listening to this short presentation around Cyber Essentials. Now, I encourage you guys to download the questions, work your way through those questions to help you formulate your answers and see where your weak areas are. If you still have questions and are challenged in certain parts of Cyber Essentials, please come to the Jisc clinics, which is really focused on education and research, and we'll be glad to help you through this process. If you've got any questions, please email the professional cybersecurity services at Jisc, who will be glad to pass on information to myself or to any of the Cyber Essential assessors within Jisc.